Well, welcome back, my friends. We are in another episode of Cabernet and Pray, and today we're going around the world. We are going all the way to France, one of the absolute centerpieces of wine in the entire world. And so today you're going to get to go to France. We're jumping time zones quite a bit, and I'm super excited for you to meet my friend Nicholas Martin. Now, when you think about Nick, wine runs through his family veins. His father was active in the transformation of Languedoc's wine scene in the 1980s. He was helping up-and-coming winemakers to find new markets overseas. Languedoc is the region where he learned everything about wine and winemakers who dared to challenge tradition. He became an importer of premium boutique wines in Singapore. And like his father, his focus was to shine a light on the new generation of wine producers in Languedoc. The area is today one of the most dynamic wine regions in the world, blending innovation with tradition and where nearly anything is possible. Now in southern France, Nick hosts wine tours to small family producers who are passionate and take real pride in their wines. And he also participates in the crafting of those wines. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
I've never shared this with anybody publicly. There's so many things happening in this conversation right now. 1,000 years from now, people are going to be looking at this podcast saying, so this was the breakthrough.
This is delicious. I really love it.
The joke I always say is like, how'd you learn so much? And I got to drink a lot.
The power of food and beverage to lubricate an environment.
Resistance to change is hurting the church.
I'm not in the camp that God has a penis or a vagina or a body at all. I'm in the camp that God is a universal spirit.
This is the strangest podcast that I've been on. I don't even know what to do.
I'm trying to think of something smart to say. It tastes good to me.
I'm kind of geeked up about this wine.
You've uncovered the mystery. You've exposed the formula.
We're going to sit down at a table. We're going to have a glass of wine and some food. And we're going to talk about the beauty of Jesus.
Thank you for the hospitality that this particular podcast provides folks like myself, and I know others, to be curious around their faith practices.
It's actually the first time that I talked about that out loud.
I will never forget the first time I bought a bottle of wine by myself, which was yesterday.
By the way, drinking this Pinot Grigio at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is making me even more direct in my communication than I normally would be.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Great to have you. Anything that we missed in that we need to know about you?
Oh, I think that was a very good introduction. There's a lot to talk about. I mean, we can elaborate on all that, but you're running the show, so here I am to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, we'll see where we go. I think we need to start off with what we're drinking today. And I'm excited. I'm drinking something totally unique. This is not what I normally drink, but I was given a bottle. This is called Valenzano Chamong Red Reserve. This is a red wine from New Jersey. And I think this is perhaps the first New Jersey wine I've ever had, or at least that I can think of. And this is made from Concord grapes. So think grape juice, like traditional grape juice. That's what this is. And I got to tell you, overwhelmingly, when I tasted this, it tastes like communion. Like, I mean, literally, I'm getting like flashbacks, good grape juice, when you're a kid, and not like the bad watered down grape juice. But like when I would get the good grape juice as a kid, this is what it tastes like. And so it's like blending worlds for me of like my memories, taking communion as a kid, getting the really good grape juice, and then here it is in a bottle. This is super light. I've got quite a good pour going here, but actually very light in color, very light in tannins as well, which makes this a really good breakfast/morning wine. Now, because of the time zone difference, I'm actually recording this in the morning in Arizona time to be able to connect with Nick in France. So I don't normally do these in the morning. So this is a great choice for me. I haven't had lunch yet. This is a real easy drinker before I get into my day. As I was tasting this, just overwhelming grape jelly. I mean, this just a load of grape jelly you get, cranberry. For fun, I would say gummy worms, get some of that sugar in there. And it does have a bit of residual sugar, a bit of sweetness to it. So this is kind of drinking candy, kind of like maybe a transition adult grape juice, if you will. If you're trying to dip your toes into the water of the wine world, and you're like, hey, I know grape juice, this might be a great way to do it. But I'm actually really enjoying it. Super fun wine. Nick, what are you drinking today?
Well, may I just say that 11 a.m., I believe for you, is the time when we start, our aperos in this part of the world.
There we go.
Very normal. I appreciate that you are doing this with me.
So I'm channeling my inner Frenchman is what you're saying.
And it's 7 p.m. here, and this is what we do too at this time before dinner.
I love it.
So there you go.
All right. So what are you drinking in your glass?
So I have a white wine, which is what we would have before dinner. It's a very strange. I've discovered this winery. It's can you see there you go. It's Empedusa pennata, which is a type of praying mantis that is present in the vineyards of this producer. She is a young French-Dutch lady who I think is emblematic of the Languedoc, of this part of the world. And it is a Grenache Blanc Vermentino blend. Now, why Grenache and Vermentino? Well, both are very common here. Vermentino less so, but Grenache Blanc is one of the most common grape varietals we have here. And so I think her blend is a result of, what she's trying to do is balance acidity with all those fruit flavors that you find in Grenache. The problem with Grenache is it's not very acidic. It's the flesh of any wine, but the Vermentino is the skeleton. That's what gives the wine its acidity. And we're talking here about a lot of floral aromas, citrus fruits. I'd even put in peach. So I think it's a good balance between, like I said, citrus and stone fruit. It's a discovery, like I said, and that's what's great about this part of the world, is that because we have so many different terroirs, different microclimates, we can do a lot of things that elsewhere you cannot. You just mentioned your wine is a Concord grape. Now, that's very interesting for me because it is clearly a North American varietal, which we do not have here. That said, you did save our wine industry 150 years ago with this kind of, I wouldn't say the grape, but the rootstock.
Yep.
Is what allows us here in France and in Europe to continue to make wine. So thank you. But I don't think it would do well in our part of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, not great.
Yeah.
So I think we're tasting very different wines here, and that's what I love.
That's all right.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
I want to start with how you and I met, and I'll recollect it from my point of view, and then I want to give you a chance to share your perspective. I got asked to preach at a church, and it's a church that I regularly speak at. And as I recall, the passage was John 15, the idea of Jesus saying, "I am the vine, you are the branches." And as I was looking at that, I thought, how fun would it be to teach that passage really from a winemaking point of view, and to not just tiptoe around, okay, Jesus is kind of referring to wine here, but really go into it and teach it from that point of view. And so I asked the pastor, I just said, hey, would you be comfortable with that? Because, obviously this is not the traditional way to preach this passage. And he said, go for it. And so as I recall, I was showing slides of different vineyards, and I was explaining how vines grow and what vines look like and what Jesus may have been saying and what that visually means. And and really unpacking it, from a wine point of view. And as a communicator, I had no idea, is this going to land with people or is this just too much?
Yes.
Are people going to go, what is this guy, talking about wine? Just talk about Jesus, But to me, why I love the overlap of, spirituality and wine is that so many of these images that Jesus uses, they incorporate wine and winemaking. And so I really went for it. And then after the service, someone comes up to me and says, you've got to meet someone here from France. And I said, oh, really? There's someone here? And yeah, he's visiting. And then they said it's his first time at church in an American church. And I said, oh, really? He's not been to an American church? Like, no, he's never been here. And, again, as it was told to me, this is his first one. And I said, what does he do in France? And they said, he's in the wine industry. And I thought, how cool. And so I get introduced to you after the service, and you kind of explained to me, you are not a Christian, you're an atheist. You came because of a friend, and you were kind of exploring, not sure where you were. But I remember you were choked up over that, and you had had emotion, a lot of emotion on your face as you considered, hey, you pop into a church, just kind of a random, Sunday for you, and here this preacher is talking about vineyards and winemaking and Jesus. And what was that like? What do you remember from that day?
I felt connected. I would consider myself, thinking back, that I was and probably still am a lost Christian.
Okay.
And I say that because I was baptized a Russian Orthodox. Grew up in a Anglican school. I was at boarding school in the UK. Married a Roman Catholic, and I think at some point I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't like what I was hearing. I felt disconnected, and so when I heard your sermon, something touched me deeply as you saw for yourself, and I think it was the analogy certainly helped, but there was something that you said that just certainly touched me. I think I'm still trying to figure out what exactly it was, but it was you who had this message, which I was very, very receptive to. Maybe the moment had come for a, and I think we've talked about it since. But certainly, yeah, there was a wanting to come back. But yeah, and I. But this is something we can discuss later on. I think what I saw, what I felt was you reaching out, asking people to reflect on the message, what the Bible was saying, what the message was, and I find that's a great thing. It's what allowed me to connect, and I think it encourages people to think rather than be told what they should think, how they should think.
Right. Yeah, you and I have had a chance to talk numerous times since then, and have developed a friendship out of that. But that's one of the things you've shared, and we can get into that a little bit. That the way Jesus was presented was perhaps a little bit different than you have heard it elsewhere, in the sense of, here's the right answers, here's what you believe, kind of fall in line. And this was more of an invitation to experience it.
Which I think is what Jesus wanted, was trying to do at the time. He was challenging the status quo. He was bringing people into the church, rather than I think he was a rebel, and that's what I am too, somewhere.
I think a lot of us who are either listening or watching this podcast can relate to that spirit. So before we get into the spirituality stuff, let's talk wine for a little bit. When you think about, obviously this runs in your family, as I said in the intro, but when you think back, when did you get really interested in wine? Like, what are those early memories for you?
Well, wine in France it's in our DNA. So we wine is part of our culture. We even drink it as when we're kids. Well, we're allowed to sip, even at the dinner table. But when did I really get interested? I guess when my dad started to work in the Languedoc. He was not in the wine business. He was a diplomat, and he finished his career in the Languedoc in Montpellier. And his job was simply to find export markets for these new winemakers, because this was a time when there was this big transformation from bulk, cheap and cheerful, to quality wine. And the new generation of winemakers, like I said, were looking to make their own wines and get people to drink them. And he started working with people, with families who I still work with today. Although he worked with the dad, I'm working with the daughter or son. So there is a continuity. So I would say it was when I was about quite late in life, really, maybe 15 years ago. But I really got into it when I moved to Singapore, and I needed something to do. And it was very easy. It was a very easy transition. I had my suppliers, again, my dad's people. So I started working with Languedoc wines in Singapore. And I think that was a time, I think I came in at the right moment, because Singapore, certainly, to a lesser extent, perhaps the United States, French wine, Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne. So there's been no looking back. Then when I returned to France, it was about getting into doing something I'd always wanted to do, and it allows me to not just stay in the business, but also to introduce foreigners outside to what we are doing here. And there is so much to discover. There's so much going on. We are in a part of the world where, like I said earlier, there are a lot of microclimates, so we can basically produce pretty much anything. Now, I'm just going back a little to those 1980s. The region started from scratch. They weren't bound by tradition, winemaking methods that you will see in other parts of France, like Bordeaux and Burgundy and Champagne. We were able to basically do what we wanted. The winemakers had a clean slate. Legislation allowed for that. So today we have nearly 100 grape varietals. That's unheard of anywhere in France. Up to, I think the number is about 90, and you can imagine what they can do with that. It's very, very interesting. This is why Matt, we combine tradition with innovation. But
so I want to get more into that, because that's intriguing to me, and it's unique because I've been to Bordeaux, and so many rules, so many regulations, and I think, especially as an American, we're still kind of like the wild, wild west, the way we often view things. A lot less rules in how we do wine in America. you go over to, Europe and, France or Italy, and you realize, holy cow, you have all these rules, all these regulations, very, very strict of what you can do. So when you talk about, winemakers who are challenging tradition, and I think you're referencing specifically in southern France, what does that look like, and what led to that? What prompted kind of this resurgence there?
Well, like I said, when the French government said, right, you need to stop producing all this cheap plonk, you need to stop that. We will pay you to uproot your vineyards. The emphasis now has to be on quality. And
which, by the way, as an American, it's just funny to think that's the government of France saying our wine has gotten bad. We have to do something about it.
That's exactly what happened.
A wild thought.
We were selling hundreds of thousands of tons of grape to the rest of the country. So at some point, and at the same time, I think the idea was to reduce consumption. I mean, I guess somebody at the top said, okay, we need to calm down. You need to start drinking better. Okay. And that's what happened, really.
Quality over quantity.
Absolutely. And the results have been spectacular. I mean, some of the wines we have today here are world-class. They're exported worldwide, even to the United States. I am challenged, though, to find some of them in Arizona. That's a shame. I will try and remedy that at some point. And I'm looking forward to it, certainly.
What's something that French people know about wine that Americans need to learn?
I think you can teach us a lot. The French think they know everything. Which is why my wine tours are in English, because the average Frenchman will say, no, I know already, and there's no discussion. I mean, I think we the French are living on their laurels, we've been making wine for centuries. We know how to make wine. Everybody else, well, they learned from us. But like you were saying earlier, we are still bound, at least in the rest of the country, we are still bound by tradition, by rules. We've been making the same wine for centuries. New technology, but those are the grapes. This is when you can harvest, et cetera, et cetera. And that leads me to say, in the Languedoc, we've had a lot of foreign winemakers come in and making wine. So there's a different approach. There's been an outside knowledge has come in, an outside outlook has come in.
How is that perceived from the French people?
I don't think it's a problem, because a lot of even French winemakers have embraced, this new outlook. A lot of younger winemakers have studied abroad. They've been to Australia. They've been to California. They've learned new techniques. So I think we're all on board.
So the game has changed a bit, is what you're saying.
This is why I say I think we need to learn. We have learned a lot from Americans, from the Americans and from the Australians, and it's beneficial to our wine industry.
So okay, but culturally, like you said, you grew up with this in your DNA. That is not something most Americans would say is in our DNA. In fact, one of the reasons why I like doing what I do with CommunionWineco is that we often are introducing people to wine, or helping them take a little bit that they know and go deeper into it. And, we provide a lot of education in that, but also just exposure to wine ideas, because most Americans aren't as familiar. So with the familiarity, is there anything that you guys just intuitively, like you said, you grew up drinking it as kids, sipping it at the table, anything that you go, yeah, you guys got to do more of this, and your life would be better?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, drinking wine is always good fun. I mean, it allows for good conversation.
It does.
Brings down barriers.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And I think wine in certain countries is still considered perhaps a luxury item. There's a certain snobism about it, but there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I think wine has always been approached with a little, I'm not sure what to say, I'm not sure what to think. No. One has to find the wine he likes or she likes and enjoy. Ultimately, wine is to be enjoyed. Yeah, I think
one of the things we often say at our events, because people think, well, if I can't explain, what's in the glass, and I don't know the varietals, and I don't know the history, then I'm somehow doing it wrong. And we always say that can certainly help, and that can add to it. But at the end of the day, it's like you said, there are wines you like and wines you don't like, and you drink the ones you like. I mean, really, it's not more complicated than that.
You find out what's in it, and then you proceed to finding similar wines made from the same grapes or in the same way.
Sure. What's an underrated wine that people who are listening to this or watching this should go check out?
Check out wines from the south of France.
You're gonna claim the whole region, huh?
Absolutely, because I think that there is so much out there waiting for you. Unfortunately, in Arizona, there are not as many, not as much as I would like. But when you see a Languedoc wine, go for it. Give it a try.
Any particular varietals, or just anything in the region?
Well, you will inevitably see Grenache, Syrah, or Shiraz. They're the mainstay of our wine industry here. You will see Viognier, Grenache Gris on the white side. That's a good way to start. Compare them to the Grenache Syrahs you'd find in California or even Arizona. Try it and see, and compare them and see how they match.
All right.
Good way to start.
When you look at the wine industry, and obviously you're in it in the heart of southern France, but this could be in your region, or this can be just kind of globally. What changes do you see coming into the industry into the future? How do you see it? How do you see the way we experience wine is going to change?
The way we experience wine? Well, I think what's happening, certainly climate change is having a big impact on the wine industry. I say that because I work in the vineyards during the winter, and there is definitely there's been a big, which has so the weather is getting warmer, it's getting drier, so we are beginning now to plant grape varietals that are not from France. We have to go to Spain. We have to go to southern Italy. We have to go to Greece to find those varietals that can live in a warming climate, in a dry climate. That will have a big impact. We're beginning to see the changes, but in the long term, this is what will be. It will, the weather will have a big impact on the type of wines we drink. No doubt.
You think certain wines are going to go away?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So which wines should we be drinking now that will not be around in the future?
That's a good question. I think, again, vines are very adaptable. Although at some point, they'll need to move further north. Certainly, the big Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre blends that we have we'll be seeing less of. We still, because of many microclimates, we have Sauvignon Blanc, Vermentino, as in this wine. Pinot Noir will disappear. They need cool climates. So you won't be seeing any of those anymore.
Well, if Pinot Noir goes away, that'll be a sad day for my heart.
I'm talking about Languedoc. In Burgundy, they'll be sticking around for a while, but still.
Yeah, each region's gonna have to figure that out. All right, I think we should take a little drink break, and then we'll change gears here. Okay, before we get into some of the Christianity stuff, when coming out of a drink break, I like to ask our guests about a story that they had where they just think back to an incredible moment drinking a wine where I like to say the stars aligned, everything was perfect, and they just think back and have these memories. Some of our guests don't have a ton of wine experience, so sometimes we're giving them that moment, but I think you've got to have a treasure trove of these. What is just one of your top moments with an incredible glass of wine? Tell us about it.
I would say I had a moment when I discovered with one of the winemakers I work with a rosé wine that they were producing. It's not something that I'd ever tasted before. And its name was actually L'Incroyable. Now, incroyable in English is incredible. And it was. And I was able to share that experience in Singapore. And it did become my best-selling wine. It's nice to find that kind of when you discover a wine like that, just make that, and you just say, wow. Yes, there are other moments. That's the first one I thought of because it was incroyable.
It was well named, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
That would be disappointing to drink that bottle and go, nope, it's not incredible. This is just average. So it's good that it lived up to the name.
It certainly did.
So you unpacked a little bit of this. You have quite a handful of traditions in your spirituality background, and you kind of named a few of them. But for a lot of Americans watching or listening to this, we have a way more narrow probably background with Christianity than you do. I would love to hear, with the versions of Christianity that you grew up with outside of the U.S., what was that journey like for you? What did you kind of take away from each of those different branches?
Well, like I said, I was brought up I was baptized and brought up a Russian Orthodox. And with hindsight, it was. I think the answer would be better. I think the question would be better answered if I continue with the rest. So I was brought up a Russian Orthodox. And I went from about the age of 11. My dad was transferred to the UK, and I went to an Anglican school. And I was in an Anglican school for several years until the age of 18. With all the beautiful things that that come from being in a Church of England school. I mean, we would go every Sunday to sing our hymns. I certainly enjoyed that. Now when I think about it, I certainly, and when I hear them, rarely hear anyway, a smile comes to my face. But I think the defining, what really impacted me was my experience in Italy, I spent time in Italy. My ex-wife was a Roman Catholic, and to be very honest, the Catholic Church has a very different approach with respect to what I had known and experienced before. So I'm talking, of three different ways of approaching Jesus and Christianity. And I think at this point, perhaps you should ask me some questions, because I think I would be better understood. I'm talking about experience, which certainly are varied, but but again, the three churches are similar but very different at the same time.
Okay, what's something you liked about each of the three that you took away, that you enjoyed?
I think I'd prefer to say that I found the Roman Catholic Church to be very, very rigid. You are either in or out. That's changed. That certainly has changed. When my children are Catholics, but I don't see. It has moved on, if I may use the term. In my time, it was like I said, it was black or white, black and white. You're in or you're out, which I think doctrine was such that Roman Catholics had to live double lives. And that's a big word, but there was a lot of hypocrisy in the sense that this is what the church is telling you to do, and this is what human beings actually are like. We can't do what you are telling us to. And I may sound a little extreme, but that's certainly how I saw things, how I felt things, and otherwise I wouldn't be saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Catholic experience sounds more negative from what you experienced. Anything positive from the Russian Orthodox?
Well, I think Russian Orthodoxy is not going. I don't feel that Russian Orthodoxy is going to tell you what to do. It's more about your conscience.
Okay.
You are encouraged, but nobody's going to be judging you for it. And we're not going to be looking at what you're doing. It's up to you. This is the word of God. We encourage you to abide by the word of God, but the rest is up to you. I found that very much in the Anglican Church. I think where you have a hierarchy, you tend to have a certain rigidity in terms of doctrine.
Right.
And I don't think that's always a good thing, because we are so diverse. We all have our failings. We are all sinners at some point, but that's okay. We err. We all do. And I think Jesus was accepted. But again, like I said, the Catholic Church is a hierarchy, and it came down to I think it's become a structure, even a political structure, if you will. It has been for a very long time. Again, things are changing. But I think you would have to, again, it was about what you should believe rather than who I am.
Yeah. Okay, so the last few years, then you've added more experiences with Christianity in America, and you've seen a different flavor of that. As you put all of that together, because all of us are a combination of our experiences and our perspectives and our journeys. What do you think about Christianity these days? Just you look back at all of it now. How do you make sense of it? What do you think about Christianity?
Christianity is a set of values. It has to be, again, I'm talking from a very personal experience. We need to be open, tolerant. We have to be able to forgive. We're not all the same, more inclusive, less judgmental. But the values that we have, I believe that there's the secular we're tending to be going towards a more secular society, which is not a bad thing, but we should not lose those fundamental Christian values, which I believe make for a more cohesive society, more respect for each other, which I lacking. I feel that because we're moving away, becoming more secular, I just think there's more conflict.
And you can't just tell people in a secular society, here's what you should believe, and expect that they're going to do that.
No, I think a secular society allows people to again, it encourages diversity. I mean, there is Christianity isn't alone. There is Islam, there is Buddhism, there is Judaism. A secular society allows for that. There is a separation of church and state, which is a good thing. But what I'm trying to say is those values are common to all three, to all four, perhaps. But as Christians, we have a set of values which I think are being forgotten or ignored, and I believe that leads to conflict.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening. We're divided. We should be more respectful of each other. We should be more. There should be more interaction. There should be more dialogue. And I think because of those that fundamental values are missing.
Okay, so switch gears a little bit. When you think about Jesus in particular, what do you think about Jesus these days?
Well, that's a good question. Jesus was he ended up. I think he upended the status quo. Jesus was somebody who rebelled against the church at the time. He was looking to be more inclusive. He wanted to bring people into the church. I think that's important. I think he wanted people to hear the word. That word was not available to everybody. It was, I think, and again, that wanting to bring the word to everybody. I think he wanted people to think for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what he tried to do. He had a message of tolerance, peace, which I think was missing at the time. Again, I think the original message of Jesus has been hijacked, has been corrupted with the instauration of a church, which became very political, if you will. It became It came under the influence of kings and queens, and it became a political tool to impose a certain way of thinking. So Jesus was a rebel. I think he understood that that's not what the church was about. It was about the message of God, which had been lost.
Love it. What's something right now that's blowing your mind? This could be anything.
What's blowing my mind? I feel that I'm learning something new every day. I don't know what's happened, but that even meeting you, it was a revelation, an inspiration, and I meet new people pretty much every day now, and everybody has something interesting to say. At least those people who I've met, and it's allowed me. I'm curious by nature, but I like to hear new things, and some of those new things are like you just said, mind-blowing, because they're unexpected.
That's been one of my favorite parts of hosting this podcast, is just getting the chance to sit down and have formal conversations with people and just ask people questions about themselves. And I've been reminded of what you said, that people are endlessly fascinating if you take the time to get to know them and to ask them what they think. And there's so much to learn. Obviously, I love reading. You can learn a lot in books, but you can learn a lot just by sitting down with someone, especially over a glass of nice wine, and say, hey, tell me about this, or what do you think about this? And listening. And not that we can solve all of our problems with a glass of wine in a conversation, but we could solve a lot of them if we sat down and just listened to one another and said, help me understand, why do you see this the way you do? Or what do you know about this? And I totally agree. Every day presents opportunities to learn from the people that you
learn every day. We will never stop learning. So just to go back to what we were talking about. So what I appreciated when I met you, Jeremy, was there was a dialogue. I felt there was a dialogue with the congregation. Okay.
I love that.
We were able to talk, that was very new to me, which is why I felt the way I did. That has never been possible for me. That had never been possible for me beforehand. I was spoken to,
right,
or spoken at,
right. One of my favorite moments with Jesus is he's with his disciples, and they're asking him a theological question, and he says to them, how do you read it? Like, when you read the scriptures, how do you make sense of this? And he invites them to give their own interpretation. And I've always found that so fascinating, that Jesus, if there ever was someone that you would think would just say, well, here's the right answer, that's Jesus. Like, Jesus should be the one to be like, well, the right way to read that is X, Y, Z. But even Jesus resisted that answer and instead invited dialogue and said, how do you read it? How do you make sense of that? And I love that. And that is what, when I'm preaching, I'm doing my best, right? I'm not Jesus, but I'm doing my best to channel that same spirit of, how do you read it? How do you make sense of this? And you bring that dialogue together. And there's something far more beautiful than, here's the 10 things you need to believe about this topic or this verse. And that, to me, it's like, blech. And so much of Christianity has become that. Just believe these things, check these boxes. And I'm like,
I think it's been hijacked. Well, it certainly was. I'm a history buff, so I do take interest in how things developed and how the original church came to be a pawn in the hands of the powers that be. It became a political tool. and so again, and then that's been going forward in not in the same way, of course, but when I think when you have a hierarchy, a certain structure that doesn't allow for how do we say, dialogue, or even dissent,
yes.
you have a problem, and people move away, which is what's happened too. They move elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
People do want to be able to express their opinion, and I think that's very important. It's healthy.
Well, that's how people learn. You have to engage it yourself.
Yeah.
All right. What's a problem that you're trying to solve right now?
I wouldn't call them problems. I would call them challenges.
Okay. What's a challenge you're trying to solve?
A challenge is getting Languedoc wines into Arizona.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day.
There you go. That's a challenge.
So just to give a little context for everyone listening who was not at our lunch that we had, we were talking about how the really good wines, are not the ones you usually get on the shelf. Those are the wines you get directly from the chateau or the winery, or and so how do we get those? And we were talking about how do you get the really good stuff? And when you travel and you get to go to some, even in the States, you can go to obviously people think California or even like Oregon, you can go to these wineries, experience the wine directly where it's made. And that's the stuff. They're not selling that stuff in stores. That's the really good stuff. But it's true. It's true. When I traveled to Bordeaux, I realized, these Bordeaux wines taste different than the Bordeaux wines that I can buy in Arizona. These are not the same quality of Bordeaux wines. And so you were talking about in Southern France, the stuff that you love. How do we get people to actually do that? So if you figure out your solution to that challenge, I am all ears, because I want to experience great Southern France wines.
You won't be disappointed.
I don't think I will.
I did it in Singapore, and people were, they found something new and something they liked, and I mean, rosé was one of my. People loved it because we do make a very good rosé in this part of the world. So
it's so funny. I have a winemaker on here on one of our episodes, and I asked him the question, what's an underrated wine that we need to check out? And he said rosé. So we need more people talking about rosé. That is a trend alert, people. I'm just telling you, there's something there. Okay, Nick, what's something you're excited about right now?
I'm excited about. So we expect a lot of people visiting where I live this year, especially from the US, because of our Olympics. The Olympics are in Paris, but also in Marseille, which is a big city not very far from here. Marseille will be hosting the water events, and so we're expecting a lot of people coming in, and that's good, because it means that people are interested to come here. They and I imagine they will want to discover new things and visit places, and that's what I do. So I am looking forward to that.
They're gonna want someone to show them around some French, some Southern French vineyards, and I'm very passionate about some of the areas we have. Very beautiful landscapes, great wines. And nobody's ever been disappointed with what they've seen and what they've tasted. So that's what I'm excited about. Yeah. All right. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about that we just didn't get to?
Well, I'm sure it'll come to mind. That's what generally happens. Having a great time, and that'll come later, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to you'll have an opportunity to do that. further down the line. Yeah.
All right. So our audience wants to check you out. You have a website, awineaffair.fr. So for us Americans, you gotta go .fr. That's the website, right? And on Instagram, it's _wine_affair.
Correct.
That's the best place to find you? See what you're doing?
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Nick, it has been so fun to be friends with you these last, I don't even know how long it's been, year or two. But just to get to know you better, that we've had fascinating conversations. And I love that you have brought us to France today. The podcast has gone further than it's gone yet. And we're grateful for your insight, for your story, and for your friendship. So thank you for taking the time today to walk us through this and for sharing your perspective.
Thank you for taking me to Arizona. That was, it's always a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Cabernet and Pray. See you guys later.